After 15 years of being told I was too difficult for family gatherings, my daughter and son-in-law had the audacity to show up at my penthouse begging for money. They had no idea I'd been recording every cruel word they'd said about me over the years. The look on their faces when my lawyer played back their own voices in court was worth every lonely holiday I'd endured. Follow my story until the end and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this reaches. At 70, I thought I understood what family loyalty meant. My name is Magdalena Hawthorne, and for 4 decades I had poured my heart, soul, and every waking moment into building Hawthorne Estates, a luxury real estate empire that spanned from the vineyards of Napa Valley to the coastal properties of Big Sur. My corner penthouse on the 42nd floor of the Millennium Tower in downtown San Francisco had been my sanctuary and my reward. Floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of the Golden Gate Bridge, Alcatraz Island gleaming in the distance, and the rolling fog that painted the bay in shades of silver and gold each morning. The penthouse wasn't just a home, it was a testament to what a woman could build when she refused to accept limitations. Every marble surface, every piece of custom furniture, every carefully curated art piece told the story of someone who had started with nothing and created something magnificent. The Baccarat crystal chandelier in the foyer had been my gift to myself when Hawthorne Estates hit its first $100 million year. The Italian leather seating arrangement facing the windows was where I'd conducted some of my most important negotiations, the city sprawling below us as I closed deals that would shape San Francisco's skyline for decades. I hadn't inherited this life, I had built it. Brick by brick, contract by contract, through 18-hour days and sleepless nights when others were home with their families. While other women my age had been attending PTA meetings and soccer games, I had been transforming abandoned warehouses into luxury condominiums, turning neglected neighborhoods into sought-after addresses, and creating homes for thousands of families across Northern California. The irony that haunted my quiet evenings was profound. I had spent my life creating beautiful homes for strangers, while struggling to maintain a place in my own family's heart. My daughter Cordelia had always been my greatest source of pride and my deepest source of heartache. Even as a child, she had possessed an ethereal beauty and a sharp intelligence that reminded me of myself at her age. But where I had channeled my intensity into building something lasting, Cordelia had directed hers toward perfection. Perfect grades, perfect appearance, perfect social connections, and eventually what she considered the perfect marriage. I had raised Cordelia largely alone after her father, my college sweetheart Marcus, died in a car accident when she was only 12. Marcus had been the gentle balance to my ambitious drive, the one who reminded me to slow down and notice the small moments. His death had left both Cordelia and me adrift, each of us grieving in our own way, while trying to maintain some semblance of normal family life. Perhaps that's where I made my first mistake. Drowning in grief and overwhelmed by single parenthood, I had thrown myself even deeper into my work. Hawthorne Estates became not just my career, but my escape, my way of avoiding the empty spaces in our house where Marcus's laughter used to echo. I told myself I was securing Cordelia's future, building something that would give her every opportunity I'd never had. But Cordelia saw only a mother who was physically present but emotionally unavailable, who could negotiate million-dollar deals but struggled to help with algebra homework without checking her phone. By the time I realized my mistake, Cordelia was already 17 and had learned to navigate life without expecting much emotional support from me. She was polite, accomplished, and increasingly distant. The perfect daughter on paper, but someone who felt more like a sophisticated roommate than my child. When Cordelia announced her engagement to Nathaniel Pemberton III at 26, I was genuinely thrilled. Nathaniel came from one of San Francisco's oldest families. His great-grandfather had made a fortune in shipping and railroads in the 1800s, and the Pemberton name was synonymous with philanthropy, culture, and old money elegance. More importantly, he seemed to worship Cordelia in a way that reminded me of how Marcus had looked at me in our early years. Nathaniel was everything I had hoped for in a son-in-law. Harvard educated, articulate, professionally successful as a portfolio manager for high net worth clients, and genuinely kind to me during our initial interactions. He asked thoughtful questions about my business, expressed admiration for what I had built, and seemed to understand the demands and rewards of building wealth from nothing. Their wedding was a masterpiece of San Francisco society. 300 guests at the St. Francis Hotel with a reception that showcased the best of everything the city had to offer. I had insisted on paying for the entire celebration, partly because I could afford it, and partly because I wanted to give Cordelia the fairy tale wedding she had dreamed about since childhood. The event made the society pages of the Chronicle, with photographs of the bride looking radiant in her custom Vera Wang gown and the groom beaming beside her as they danced beneath chandeliers that cast rainbow light across the ballroom.
In 2015, American archaeologist Dr. Robert Chen had purchased the property. 6 months later, his family received a letter stating he had decided to join a research expedition in remote Peru and would be incommunicado for several years. No one had heard from him since. In 2018, wealthy collector Isabela Rodriguez bought the temple. 3 months later, she supposedly moved to Spain to care for a sick relative. Her business associates said the move was completely out of character, but her lawyer confirmed the authenticity of her correspondence. In 2021, British researcher James Morrison acquired the property. He allegedly decided to relocate to New Zealand and pursue sustainable farming. His colleagues at Cambridge found this career change baffling, but had received official documentation of his resignation. Elena's academic training kicked in. 3 people, 3 disappearances, 3 convenient explanations that removed them from the public eye permanently. Someone was eliminating anyone who got too close to whatever was hidden in that temple. Her phone rang, jolting her from her research. A no number. Dr. Vasquez, a voice said in accented English, "I understand you've made an interesting acquisition. Who is this?" "Someone who wants to help you avoid your predecessor's fate. There's a cafe in Antigua's Central Square called El Quetzal. Meet me there tomorrow at noon. Come alone." "Why should I trust you?" "Because I'm the only person who can tell you what really happened to Dr. Chen, Ms. Rodriguez, and Mr. Morrison. And more importantly, I'm the only one who can help ensure you don't join them." The line went dead. Elena spent the rest of the night researching everything she could about the temple's location. What she discovered made her blood run cold. The site wasn't just any colonial temple. It was built directly over Yaxmuul, one of the most sacred sites in ancient Mayan civilization. According to historical records, Yaxmuul had been the burial place of Kinich Yasau Chankawil, one of the most powerful rulers in Mayan history. Legend said he was buried with treasures that represented the accumulated wealth of an entire civilization: gold, jade, obsidian, and codices that contain advanced mathematical and astronomical knowledge. Spanish conquistadors had searched for the tomb for decades, but never found it. They eventually built the colonial temple over the site, perhaps to claim the location for Christianity, or perhaps to hide their continued secret excavations. If Carlos was right, someone had found Kinach Yasau's tomb and was willing to commit murder to protect it. Elena arrived at El Quetzal Café 15 minutes early, choosing a table with clear sightlines to all entrances. The person who approached her was not what she expected. Dr. Maria Santos was elegant and professional, a woman in her 50s with the confident bearing of someone accustomed to authority. She wore expensive jewelry that Elena's trained eye recognized as authentic pre-Columbian pieces worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. "Dr. Vasquez, thank you for coming. I'm the former director of archaeological preservation for the Ministry of Culture." "Former?" "I was forced to resign when I discovered what was happening at your temple." Dr. Santos ordered coffee with steady hands, but Elena noticed tension around her eyes. "What I'm about to tell you will sound incredible, but I have documentation to prove every word." She pulled out a tablet and showed Elena photographs that made her gasp. The images showed an intact Mayan burial chamber of unprecedented richness, walls covered in hieroglyphic murals, ceremonial objects made of gold and precious stones, and shelves lined with codices that appeared to be in perfect condition. This is the tomb of Kinich Yasau Chankawil, Dr. Santos explained. It was discovered in 1987 by a joint expedition between our government and certain private interests. The find was so significant that a decision was made to keep it secret while a proper excavation was conducted. Why the secrecy? Because the tomb contains more than treasure, Dr. Vasquez. The codices include astronomical calculations that are more advanced than anything we previously knew about Mayan science, mathematical formulas that could revolutionize our understanding of pre-Columbian achievement, cultural artifacts that would fundamentally change how the world views indigenous American civilizations. Elena stared at the images. This would be the archaeological discovery of the century. Exactly. Which is why certain powerful people decided it should never be revealed. Dr. Santos swiped to another image, a document bearing official seals. This is a secret agreement signed in 1988. The tomb's contents were to be gradually and quietly sold to private collectors, with profits split between corrupt government officials and an international network of artifact smugglers. That's cultural genocide. Indeed, they've been systematically looting one of the most important archaeological sites in the Americas for 35 years. The temple above was maintained as a decoy, sold periodically to maintain the illusion that the site was abandoned. Elena felt sick, and anyone who gets too close disappears. The 3 previous owners weren't killed, Dr. Vasquez. They were relocated, bribed or threatened into new identities far from Guatemala, but their cooperation was encouraged by demonstrations of what would happen if they refused. What kind of demonstrations? Dr. Santos's expression darkened. Dr. Chen's research assistant was found dead in what appeared to be a climbing accident. Ms. Rodriguez's business partner died in a car crash. Mr. Morrison's graduate student overdosed on drugs he had never been known to use. The message was clear. Cooperate and disappear quietly, or refuse and watch people you care about die. Why are you telling me this?
Because I've spent 3 years gathering evidence to expose this conspiracy, but I needed someone with legitimate legal claim to the property to help me access the site officially. Dr. Santos leaned forward. You bought that temple legally, Dr. Vasquez. You have rights that even they can't simply make disappear. What are you proposing? We document everything in the tomb, expose the conspiracy, and ensure these artifacts return to the Guatemalan people where they belong. Elena thought about her academic training, her commitment to preserving indigenous cultures, and her responsibility to the truth. But she also thought about Dr. Chen, Ms. Rodriguez Santos, Mr. Morrison, and their missing lives. And if we're caught, then we join a very exclusive list of people who chose principles over personal safety. Before Elena could respond, Dr. Santos's phone buzzed. She looked at the message and her face went white. We need to leave, now. They know about our meeting. As they stood to go, Elena noticed 3 men in business suits entering the cafe. They moved with purpose, scanning the room until their eyes locked onto Elena and Dr. Santos. The conspiracy had found them. Elena realized she was no longer just a graduate student who had made an interesting purchase. She was now a target of people who'd been committing cultural crimes for decades and had already proven they would kill to protect their secret. The 50-cent temple had just made her an enemy of some of the most dangerous people in the international art world. The distinguished man in the expensive suit extended his hand with practiced charm, but Serafina noticed that his 3 companions had positioned themselves to block all exits from the cafe. Dr. Blackwood, Dr. Restrepo, please don't be alarmed. I'm Vincent Castellanos, Director of Cultural Asset Management for the Meridian Foundation. I believe we have much to discuss regarding your recent archaeological interests. Dr. Restrepo's jaw tightened. The Meridian Foundation is a front organization, Dr. Blackwood. They're the ones who've been systematically looting the Reino de la Luna site for 3 decades. Such harsh words, Esperanza, Castellanos replied smoothly. We prefer to think of ourselves as cultural preservationists, ensuring that irreplaceable artifacts receive proper care and appreciation from discerning collectors worldwide. You mean selling stolen heritage to private buyers who hide it in vaults where scholars can never study it, Serafina said, her academic outrage overcoming her fear. Castellanos' smile remained fixed, but his eyes grew colder. Dr. Blackwood, you've purchased property that contains materials of extraordinary cultural and monetary value, materials that require specialized handling to ensure their preservation and appropriate distribution. Distribution to whom? Individuals and institutions with the resources and commitment necessary to protect such treasures for future generations. He gestured to one of his companions who produced a leather portfolio. The Meridian Foundation is prepared to offer you $12 million for immediate transfer of your property rights, plus relocation assistance to any country of your choosing. Serafina's breath caught. $12 million would solve every financial problem she ever had, fund any research project she could imagine, and set her up for life. But the offer also confirmed everything Dr. Restrepo had told her about the site's incredible value and the conspiracy surrounding it. And if I refuse? Then you'll follow the same path as Dr. Chen, Ms. Rodriguez-Santos, Professor Mackenzie, and Dr. Volkov. Comfortable relocation to a location where you can pursue new interests far from Central America. They're not living comfortably somewhere else, Dr. Restrepo interjected. Show her the photographs, Vincent. Castellanos' composure cracked slightly. I don't know what you mean. The photographs I took at the Meridian Foundation's private storage facility in Panama City, the ones showing personal effects from all 4 previous temple owners, items they would never have left voluntarily. They're dead, aren't they? The previous owners made choices that ultimately proved incompatible with their continued well-being, but you have the opportunity to be smarter than they were. That's when Itzel Colt stepped out from behind the cafe's coffee bar, where he had apparently been working as a server. In his hands was a smartphone that had clearly been recording the entire conversation. And I have been documenting everything you have said, Mr. Castellanos, Itzel announced calmly, including your admission of murder. Castellanos spun around, his professional demeanor evaporating. How did you? My family has been protecting the secrets of Templo de la Luna Sagrada for 23 generations. Did you think we would not be watching when another person bought our sacred site? Did you think we would not be prepared for your arrival? One of Castellanos' companions reached inside his jacket, but froze when he realized other cafe patrons were now standing and watching with obvious hostility. What had appeared to be random customers were clearly Itzel's allies, local people who had been positioned throughout the establishment. Dr. Blackwood, Dr. Restrepo, Itzel said urgently. There's a service entrance through the kitchen. My truck is parked in the alley behind this building. We need to leave immediately.
As they moved toward the back of the cafe, Castellanos called out desperately.
You have no idea what you're interfering with. The Meridian Foundation has contracts with governments, agreements with international organizations. You cannot simply steal property that doesn't belong to you. Like you've been stealing artifacts that don't belong to you for 35 years? Dr. Restrepo shot back. They burst through the kitchen doors and into the alley where Itzel's battered pickup truck was indeed waiting with the engine running. As they climbed into the vehicle, Serafina could hear Castellano shouting orders to his men behind them. "Where are we going?" she asked, as Itzel navigated through San Ramon's narrow colonial streets. "To the temple," he replied grimly. "If we're going to expose their crimes, we need evidence, and the only evidence that will convince the world is what lies beneath that sealed floor." "It's too dangerous," Dr. Restrepo protested. "They'll have people watching the site." "My family has protected that place for over 500 years, Itzel said. "We know paths through the jungle that conquistadors never found, trails that the Meridian Foundation has never discovered. But we must move quickly. Once Castellanos realizes we've escaped, he'll call for reinforcements." As they drove toward the mountains, Dr. Restrepo explained what they would need to do. The burial chambers contain hundreds of artifacts and codices. We need to photograph and document everything, create a complete digital archive, and then distribute copies to universities and media organizations worldwide simultaneously. "How long will that take?" Serafina asked. "If we work through the night, we might complete basic documentation by dawn, but the Meridian Foundation won't wait that long to stop us." Itzel's phone rang as they climbed into the Cordillera de Tiburon. He listened briefly, then hung up with a grim expression. "My cousin works for the telephone company. He says there have been multiple calls from San Ramon requesting helicopter rentals and private security services. Castellanos is assembling a team." "How much time do we have?" Serafina asked. "Maybe 6 hours before they can organize a proper assault on the temple site." 6 hours to document one of the most significant archaeological discoveries in human history, while being hunted by people who had already committed murder to protect their secrets. Serafina felt the weight of academic responsibility settling on her shoulders like a heavy cloak. They reached the temple as the sun was setting, painting the ancient stones in shades of gold and crimson that made the carvings seem to come alive in the fading light. But instead of the peaceful sanctuary Serafina had visited the day before, the site was now buzzing with quiet activity. Itzel led them to what appeared to be solid jungle wall, but proved to conceal a narrow path that wound behind the main structure. Following the trail, they emerged at a hidden entrance to the temple complex, a doorway that had been completely invisible from the main clearing. "This is the way my ancestors entered during the Spanish occupation," Itzel explained. "The colonizers never knew it existed." Inside, the temple had been transformed. Battery-powered lights illuminated the main sanctuary, and Serafina could see that the sealed floor section had been carefully opened, revealing stone steps leading down into darkness. But they weren't alone. A dozen people were working throughout the space, indigenous men and women of various ages, all wearing traditional clothing and moving with purposeful efficiency. "My extended family," Itzel said by way of explanation. "Cousins, uncles, aunts, grandchildren. When I sent word that the temple's secrets might finally be revealed, they came from throughout Costa Rica and Guatemala to help." Dr. Restrepo was already setting up professional archaeological equipment, high-resolution cameras, 3D scanners, and portable computers capable of processing massive amounts of digital data. "We'll work in teams," she announced. "Some people documenting artifacts, others translating codices, others creating backup copies of everything we find." They descended into the burial complex, and Serafina's breath caught in her throat for the third time in 2 days. The underground chambers were even more spectacular than the photographs had suggested. The main burial chamber was vast, with a vaulted ceiling supported by carved pillars that depicted the astronomical knowledge of the Reino de la Luna. The walls were covered in hieroglyphic inscriptions that seemed to tell the complete history of a civilization, their origins, their achievements, their understanding of mathematics and science, and their eventual decision to hide their knowledge from Spanish conquistadors. But the artifacts that truly amazed her were gold ornaments of extraordinary craftsmanship, filled stone shelves, along with jade carvings, obsidian mirrors, and ceramic vessels painted with astronomical charts that demonstrated sophisticated understanding of planetary motion. Most remarkably, the codices were in perfect condition, hundreds of books bound in materials that had somehow resisted decay for over 5 centuries. "This is impossible," Serafina whispered, running her fingers along the spine of a book that appeared to contain mathematical calculations. "Organic materials cannot survive this long in tropical conditions."
Itzel's grandmother, a tiny woman who appeared to be in her 80s, overheard and smiled. "The last king of the Reino de la Luna was also a great scientist," she said, in accented but clear English. "He knew that Spanish priests would try to destroy our knowledge, so he used techniques that preserved everything perfectly." "What kind of techniques?" "Combinations of minerals and plant extracts that create perfect atmospheric conditions. Knowledge that we have guarded for 23 generations, waiting for the right time to share it with the world." As they worked through the night, the scope of the discovery became clear. The Reino de la Luna had not been an isolated civilization. They had maintained regular contact with cultures throughout the Pacific, from Asia to Polynesia to the western coasts of the Americas. The codices contained detailed maps showing trade routes that wouldn't be discovered by Europeans for another century, linguistic guides for communicating with peoples from dozens of different cultures, and astronomical observations that demonstrated global understanding of planetary patterns. Most significantly, they had developed mathematical concepts that European scholars wouldn't formulate until the Renaissance, and had applied this knowledge to engineering projects that rivaled anything built in the ancient world. "This will completely change how we understand pre-Columbian history," Dr. Restrepo said, photographing a codex that appeared to contain detailed architectural plans. These people weren't isolated primitives. They were part of a global network of advanced civilizations. But their work was interrupted by the sound of helicopters approaching from the east. "They found us," Itzel announced grimly, checking his phone. "My cousin says 4 helicopters left San Ramon an hour ago, heading in this direction." Through the temple's windows, they could see lights moving through the forest, teams of people approaching the site from multiple directions. "How much more time do we need?" Serafina asked. "At least 2 more hours to document everything properly," Dr. Restrepo replied. "We don't have 2 hours." That's when Itzel's grandmother stepped forward with an ancient-looking wooden box. "Then we use the emergency plan that my family has prepared for 5 centuries. Inside the box were dozens of small electronic devices that looked like modern flash drives. For 20 years, we have been secretly digitizing portions of the archive, anticipating that someday we would need to reveal everything quickly. Each of these contains complete documentation of specific sections of the burial complex." "You've been preparing for this moment?" "We have been preparing for the moment when the secrets of the Reino de la Luna could finally be shared with the world without being stolen by those who would hide them for profit." The sound of helicopters was getting closer, and they could hear vehicles approaching on the main road to the temple. Castellanos' voice echoed through the jungle, amplified by a portable speaker system. "Dr. Blackwood, Dr. Restrepo, you are trespassing on private property and interfering with a legitimate cultural preservation operation. Come out peacefully, and no one will be harmed." "Private property?" Serafina called back through the temple's main doorway. "This is a UNESCO World Heritage candidate site that belongs to the people of Costa Rica." "UNESCO has no jurisdiction here, and Costa Rican authorities have been fully briefed on our operation. You have 5 minutes to surrender the archaeological materials you have stolen and submit to lawful detention."
Dr. Restrepo was working frantically to upload digital files to a secure server, while Itzel's family members prepared to evacuate through hidden jungle paths. But the uploading process was taking longer than expected, and they could hear Castellanos' team moving closer to the temple. Dr. Blackwood, a new voice called out, a woman with an American accent. This is Agent Sarah Rodriguez from the FBI's Art Crime Team. We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of theft of cultural artifacts and conspiracy to commit international art fraud. Serafina felt her heart sink. If the FBI was involved, it meant that the Meridian Foundation's influence reached much higher than they had realized. "That's impossible," she called back through the temple's main doorway. "I legally purchased this property through a government auction." The auction was declared invalid due to procedural irregularities. The property reverts to federal custody, and all archaeological materials found on this site are considered evidence in an ongoing investigation. But Itzel stepped forward with a grim smile. "Agent Rodriguez, this is Itzel Cortel, legal representative for the Indigenous Peoples Council of Central America. Under international law, this site is protected indigenous heritage, and any artifacts found here belong to the descendant communities who have maintained continuous cultural connection to this location." There was a long pause before Agent Rodriguez responded. "I'm not familiar with those provisions." "Perhaps you should familiarize yourself with the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, specifically Articles 11 and 12 regarding cultural heritage protection, or the Inter-American Court of Human Rights rulings on indigenous land rights. This site has been under the protection of my family for over 500 years, with documentation that predates any European land claims."
The codices had revealed that the Reino de la Luna had maintained regular contact with civilizations throughout the Pacific, fundamentally changing understanding of global history. Their mathematical knowledge had influenced Asian cultures. Their astronomical observations had been shared with Polynesian navigators, and their engineering techniques had been adapted by cultures as far away as Southeast Asia. Most significantly, their preservation techniques were being studied by modern scientists, leading to new methods for protecting cultural artifacts and historical documents around the world. "The Reino de la Luna teaches us that knowledge belongs to all humanity," Serafina told her audience. "When we allow cultural heritage to be stolen and hidden in private collections, we rob future generations of their right to understand their own history." She looked out at the faces in the auditorium: archaeologists, historians, government officials, and indigenous rights advocates from around the world. 500 years ago, the last king of the Reino de la Luna made a decision to preserve his civilization's knowledge for future generations, even though he knew Spanish conquistadores would try to destroy it. His foresight ensured that this wisdom survived until the moment when it could finally be shared with the world. The Meridian Foundation's criminal network had been completely dismantled, with over 300 stolen artifacts returned to their countries of origin. Vincent Castellanos and 12 associates had been sentenced to prison terms ranging from 15 to 30 years. International law enforcement agencies had implemented new protocols for investigating cultural crimes and protecting archaeological sites. But perhaps most importantly, the discovery had inspired indigenous communities throughout the Americas to share their own oral histories and traditional knowledge, leading to dozens of new archaeological discoveries and a fundamental shift in how pre-Columbian civilizations were understood and respected. "I bought an abandoned temple for 50 cents, Serafina concluded her address, thinking I was making a simple real estate investment. Instead, I discovered that small actions can have profound consequences when they're guided by respect for truth and commitment to justice." The audience erupted in applause, but Serafina's thoughts were with Itzel and his family,
who had trusted her with secrets that their ancestors had protected for over 5 centuries. Their courage had made it possible for the world to finally understand the true sophistication and global connections of pre-Columbian America. The Reino de la Luna reminds us that no civilization exists in isolation. Knowledge, culture, and human achievement have always been global phenomena. When we protect cultural heritage, we protect the story of all humanity. As Serafina left the stage, she reflected on how much her life had changed since that government auction in Paraíso. She was now a professor at Stanford University, director of the Instituto Reino de la Luna for Pre-Columbian Studies, and one of the leading advocates for indigenous heritage protection in the Americas. But most importantly, she had learned that sometimes the smallest investments, 50 cents, a moment of curiosity, a decision to stand up for what's right, can preserve treasures that belong to all humanity. The Reino de la Luna had been waiting 500 years for someone brave enough to share its secrets with the world. Serafina's 50 cents had been the key that finally unlocked one of history's greatest archaeological treasures and ensured that the wisdom of an entire civilization would never be lost again. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey through the mountains of Costa Rica and the hidden chambers of the Reino de la Luna. If this story inspired you to think about the importance of cultural heritage protection, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell for more amazing true stories about ordinary people who changed the world. Remember, sometimes the smallest actions can preserve the greatest treasures. You never know when your curiosity and courage might be exactly what the world needs.